Welcome back to our Rectory Ramble. As you may have noticed, Father Joe is gone. He's at Catholic Youth Summer Camp, or Damascus Mission Campus in Columbus, Ohio. And Kevin is back. Wait, he's not here though.
No.
Right? Did you guys hear from him?
We called him.
Yeah,
actually.
he's currently in Michigan, but he's taking some time off. He's gonna see friends from seminary, so he'll be back in 2 weeks. It sounds like.
That's great. That's great. So we have several questions that we're going to cover today. So number one, can you explain your clerical clothing? Black, white, what does it mean? Did you have to earn that at the seminary? And then the last part, there's actually a different question added into this. A woman said, I used to remember when priests wore wedding bands, but I don't see them very often anymore. What's the deal with that? So in terms of clerical clothing, do you guys know the answer to that?
Actually do not know.
Black is a sign of death, dying to yourself.
That's right. What's white the sign of?
Isn't it like kind of like how prisoners can have like a collar, like an iron collar that holds them down? It's like you're enslaved, like you're a slave to Christ. Is it similar? That's probably a horrible answer. I shouldn't have answered. I'm sorry.
I was gonna guess purity.
I never thought about it like one of those prison things. I'm sorry.
Oh my gosh.
I never thought that before. No, but you're right in the first part. So the black represents death. This is what I was told. I've never heard a universal answer for this. I've always heard different answers. Sorry.
So that's a new one.
So anyway, the black represents death, and the white is the purity of Christ and virtue and grace, right? And that priests are supposed to be signs of the eternal life in heaven. And so black is a reminder that we're going to die, but also a reminder of death to ourselves. So it's a sign of service. And the collar used to be all the way around, right? So the collar was white all the way around, and I've heard priests talk about it kind of being like a wedding band. Like, this is me married to the church. I've given up wife and children so that I can be totally...
So the church is your ball and chain.
What is happening with your images? This was not planned. Anyway, so that's that. In terms of the seminary, we don't have to earn it. It's something that we do when we declare candidacy. And the church basically says, we think you're a good candidate, and the seminarian says, I intend on becoming a priest. So candidacy is when guys get to wear the clerics in school, and it's kind of, the analogy is an engagement. So like you're saying, I'm fully intending on becoming a priest, and the church is saying, unless something radically goes wrong, we intend on you becoming a priest as well. So that's basically that. The last part of the question is, I don't know very many priests who wear a wedding band. I know a couple priests who do, as a sign of them saying that I'm married to the church. I don't know very many priests that do. So maybe it was a custom before. I'm not really familiar with that. So the next question is, how does one find intimacy through prayer, through the prayer of silence? And what about distractions? Do our distractions, how do we deal with them? And then what is it like, or how do we not feel like we're talking to ourselves or talking in silence? So what do you guys think about that? How does one find intimacy through silence?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, I always struggled with it first, trying to pray, especially when I first started discerning when I was younger, and trying to figure out what exactly are my thoughts, and what is God putting in my heart. And so one thing that always helped me was I would ask God. I'd be like, Lord, is this coming from you, or is this one of my thoughts? And usually I'd feel some sort of consolation from that, and feeling God's presence when I asked that question. So that was sort of like one way of God acknowledging that, yes, this is from Him, this is from the Holy Spirit, and that sort of helped me out a little bit.
That's good.
Yeah, that's an eternal struggle of just trying to do your best to pray, try to do your daily prayers, and you're just so distracted, and that happens to all of us. But something that I found really helpful, so as those things come up, you relate them to the Lord. So it's like, wow, I have this meeting or this thing I have to do later on today, and it just keeps on, like, I can't get rid of it. It keeps coming in mind. I can't just shove it down or just push it out of my mind. But just give that to Jesus. Jesus, I'm really anxious about this meeting or whatever the case may be. And in doing that, like you're just it's just a point of surrender, kind of like Father you talked about in your homily 2 weeks ago. And then how do we know that like with that this isn't that I'm not just sitting there in silence, that this isn't just a waste of time. I don't know, just being intentional with like, hey Lord, like I'm giving this time to you, and I invite you to like fill this holy hour, that I'm not trying to grasp at, I guess, you're just, it's another just form of surrender. Like, I'm not going to fill this holy hour with whatever I'm doing, like whatever I want to do. Like, I'm not going to do all these prayers. I'm going to let you fill this time for me. And I don't know, just overall, just it's a big opportunity for surrender.
One of the things that I think about in terms of silence and prayer is recognizing that relationships and communication is more than verbal, right? Sometimes we reduce relationships to talking, and there's a human element of just being held, or just letting someone look at you, or even just being silent in the presence of someone and just sitting in their presence and not saying anything. There's a certain depth to a relationship that we can just simply say, okay, Lord, I'm just going to be here and let you love me. I'm just going to be here and just lean on you because I'm having a hard time here. Or there's a specific grace where you just become aware of his presence. You don't have to say anything at all. And so the truth is that there's a time to talk, and there's a time to receive his words. There's also just a time to rest. And I think it's one of the most underrated things. I said that in my homily on Sunday, but the most underrated things about prayer is resting in him, allowing him to love you and to hold you. And an image came to me recently when I was talking about prayer. Is this person I was talking to was talking about prayer and how he tries to get up and do stuff in prayer. And the image that we were talking about that came to us was, what about a little child who's trying to work in order to be held? Like, you're holding a child, the child thinks that he has to do something, or she has to do something in order to be loved. It's like, no, just calm down and stay put. And let me hold you. And it was just this remarkable thing where this guy I was talking to, he's like, that makes a lot of sense. So I'm just trying too hard. I think sometimes in our prayer, when things are difficult and we keep trying harder, we're making it harder for us. I mean, part of the Christian life, and I say this over and over again in my preaching, so the Christian life is less about trying harder than it is about letting go and letting God love us. And so I think that's one of the reasons why he is silent at times, is because we don't have to talk. We just need to have a loving faith and a loving gaze upon him. So, so that's a very short answer to that question, but I hope that helps. So next question is, what is the funniest thing you've ever seen during the liturgy, during Mass? I have so many stories. We don't have time for it. What's the funniest thing you've ever seen during Mass? Does anyone, you guys want to go first?
So this was 2 years ago, my first year at seminary, and every morning we have a 6:30 a.m. Holy Hour. So it's right at the end of Holy Hour, and the priest is doing benediction. And as the priest holds the monstrance and blesses us with Jesus, usually we have bells that ring as makes the sign of the cross. And as this guy was ringing the bells, one of the entire it's a thing with 4 bells kind of attached to it. One of the bells completely fell off, and it just made so much noise, and everyone was just trying to hold it in, trying not to laugh, and it was just it was hilarious. And as soon as Jesus was reposed and the priest walked out, people just started laughing. It was awesome. So
that's good. That was good. How about you, Christian?
During the liturgy, I can't remember. There's just small acts that are funny to me, sometimes. I think preparing for liturgy, I find there's a lot of moments that happen that are really funny.
Anything happen?
This summer, it was a daily Mass, I believe, and I was putting the kneelers out. And I'm trying to be as reverent as possible, because everyone's preparing for the Mass. I'm putting the kneelers out. I'm thinking I'm doing a good job. And I'm like, okay, I'm going to walk back now. And I turn around and people are just like, Christian, stop. And I had the kneelers completely the wrong direction.
Oh, I actually was at a Mass. They were still the wrong direction.
No, really?
Did you do that twice?
Maybe. But I was like, oh, thanks. And so I had to go back up in front of every, flip them around, and then walk back at it. That's really funny. And then, and then obviously when we're praying together, we've had some moments, or you could say, where something just happens and someone messes up. But the first time we ever messed up, like one of us started laughing, and I don't think we could. We had to take a quick 2-minute break to get our laughing out of the way, and then we continued on. So
Yeah, one of those moments. I don't think you guys were here yet, but we were praying evening prayer or night prayer with someone, and he said, "Into your we say a prayer, into your hands I commend my spirit." He said, I don't know why. He said, into your hands I commend my spirits, like in the plural. And I had this image of all these, all these, I don't even know why. This is not even that funny, but I could not. I almost had to leave the chapel because it sounded like, first of all, he was like schizophrenic or something. But not to say that's anyway. But it was more of like all these spirits coming out of him. No, that was funny. And I think actually the thing that takes the cake was Deacon's cell phone going off while I was preaching a homily, and the cell phone literally the ringer was bad to the bone. It was hysterical. I stopped preaching, I looked at him, and it was one of the funniest moments ever because I just couldn't stop laughing. Like, one thing, my phone's going off, and that happens. It's a deacon, okay, and then it's bad to the bone, and so I told everybody it was bad to the bone. It was very, very funny. So I have so many stories there, so we don't have time to go into them, but and I'm fully aware that you may not think any of these things are funny, but it's okay. It's okay. So last question is, how can God fulfill us if he is infinite in nature and we are not? And the question essentially is asking if our fulfillment is in God, who if we love with everything we have, or if we know God, we love him, how can we as finite creatures be fulfilled by an infinite creature if we can't know God fully? So is knowing God fully essential to fulfillment? What do you guys think?
Nope.
Why not?
I mean, any finite thing can be filled. I don't know. You have a cup and you put it under like a waterfall, it's going to be filled.
Even if it can't contain a whole waterfall?
Yeah.
That's a great analogy. It's the one I was going to use. I mean, essentially, the fact is that God is infinite, and we are made for God. Well, the only person who can fulfill us is God. It's God, and but it doesn't mean that we have to know him completely, or we have to be able to love him completely. I'm sorry. It doesn't mean we have to know him completely, but we just need to know him as much as we can, which is the fullness of us. And the same with love. We love him with everything we have, but it doesn't mean we're able to exhaust him in loving him. He can't. I mean, he's way beyond us. So that's definitely that's what I would say. Anything to add?
What if in heaven though, in knowing and gazing upon the beatific vision, do we come to know a more certain knowledge of him? I know, or is gazing upon the beatific vision like gaining full understanding him completely, or do we never?
Yeah, we can't understand him completely. He's always going to be beyond us. His nature transcends ours. We will understand him. We'll see him as he is,
Right.
But we won't be able to comprehend everything. And I always think that's great because one of the things about heaven is it's never boring. A lot of people have these stale images of heaven that are just really, really inappropriate for Christianity. It's like, yeah, I'll be golfing in heaven. It's like, oh, okay. Whatever golf was to you, it's going to be 10 times better than that, 100 times better than that. And there might be something like golf in heaven. I'm not going to take that away, but just to say, don't reduce heaven to your best pleasures on earth. That's shooting way too low. I mean, all the visions of the angels and saints, all the people who had near-death experiences, all the descriptions of heaven in Scripture are much greater than that. And so some of the people talk about everything always being new, everything always being fresh, and the joy just never ends, right? And so that's because God is infinite. We're never going to exhaust him. If God was not infinite and we just knew him once, we could be bored of that. But just like people who are in love and who stay in love, there's just always new dimensions of the other person, and that's on an exponential scale with God. So, yeah.
Father Brian Dorr had not Father Brian. Father Brian, what's his last name?
Gross.
Gross.
I don't know why I said
Door.
I don't know why I myself out of Brandon.
That's fine.
But he had sort of the same homily as what you were just talking about.
Oh, yeah?
He brought up how our faith may seem very old because Christ instituted 2,000 years ago, but every experience that we have with God in prayer and the Eucharist is new, and so that's something we're not presenting something old to people. We're presenting new experiences with Him every single day.
That's great. That's great. My prison chains. A big chain around my neck. My prisoner chain is actually hurting. So anyway, that's all we have. If you guys have more questions, please put the question in the box below. We'll hope to see you next time.